Okay, so we're going to begin. Last week, we left off with Kohelet telling us that he does not find too many advantages to almost anything. En yitaron. There's no advantage to anything. What's important in life? I think everybody would like to know what is important and what's not. In this way, we wouldn't have to waste our time searching. We only have so many years to live, so many years to spend down here in this world. We'd like to do things right, hopefully be successful and be happy. But people get confused between what is a priority and what is not. In Judaism, there's a very good word for this. And that is, people get confused between ma ha'ikar or ma ha'tafel. What is the important and what is the secondary? You're having a bowl of cereal, for example. What beracha do you make? On the milk or on the cereal? Usually on the cereal, it may be mezonot. The milk is shehakol, but it's tafel. It's secondary to the cereal. And therefore you don't make necessarily two berachot all the time when you have foods mixed together. Sometimes, yes, you have a cholent, you're going to have potatoes, you're going to have meat, or you may have mezonot. And you want every one of them. Each one is important, even though they're mixed. You may need to make a beracha, a blessing for everyone. But sometimes one is ikar, the other is tafel. You have a bureka. It's a good question. But you know what a bureka is, right? A bureka is like a knish. It's dough, and in the dough there's potatoes with mushrooms. Sometimes it's cheese. Sometimes it's tered. How do you say tered in English? Spinach. Right? What beracha do you make? Do you want the spinach or do you want the dough? Or is the dough just to hold the spinach and the potato and the you see? That's called ikar and tafel. If something is ikar, that's what you make a beracha. The other one may just be holding. Another example is an ice cream cone. You really want the ice cream cone? No, it's just to hold the ice cream. Do you want the ice cream? But of course you're going to eat the cone too, and you're going to eat the cone after you're done with the ice cream. It's going to be a separate beracha. It's not happening at the same time. So it all does, of course, require analysis as far as berachot is concerned. But in life, it happens too, that there is an ikar and there's a tafel. There are things that are important. There are things that are not really important at all. Maybe a little bit, but not a lot. And people do not always know what's really important. Their vision is blurred. So why is their vision blurred? And that's where we're going to begin with where we left off today. We're still in Perek Bet in Kohelet, in chapter 2. Why is the vision blurred? Why can't they distinguish between what is important and what's not? You may have heard in Hebrew there is a saying that many people like to use occasionally, especially if they're not religious. Kol echad va'emet shelo. Everybody with their truth. You know, let live. Everyone to his whims and wishes. Who's to say that one is better than another? Who's to say that his way is true and his way is not true? Who's to say? Right? Let everyone be what they wish to be. Let everyone live their life as they wish to live their life. Can anybody tell anybody else, your way is not good, my way is better? No, not necessarily. I mean, who's to say? Remember, we're not talking about God right now. We're talking about normal human beings trying to live their life as best as possible. Is there anyone that can say that this way is better? Not necessarily. Of course, if you can really prove it, if you can really prove something black and white, that's different. You have statistics to back you up, that's different. But when you don't have statistics, there could be all kinds of philosophies and all kinds of beliefs that people subscribe to, and who's to say that one is more correct than the other? And that is where that expression came from. Maybe it's okay for everyone to believe in their truth, but we know that that's impossible. Why is that impossible? Because when it comes to emet, there's only one emet. What does the word truth mean? If you look it up in the dictionary, truth is not false. I mean, truth is truth. Can there be two truths? It's impossible. If there's two, then one of them is not true. When we say truth, we mean the solid and only truth that there may be. We may not know what it is, but there are no two. Okay, that we do know. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called truth. So it can't be that each one live his life with his truth. One of them is not going to be true. What you could say, however, is that each one with his beliefs. Okay, each one with his beliefs, each one with his morals and his values, his musar. That you could say. Why could you say that? Because that's just a fact. Rabbis tell us, "Geshem shepartzufehem shonot, kach deotehem shonot." In the same way that people are different in their appearance, people look different. Their face. In the same way that so many people in this world look very different, even though some people look more or less alike, but in the same way that people are different in their features, in the same way their da'at, their sechel, their mind is different. Everybody has their own opinion. Is that okay? Yes, it's okay. People can have different ideas. People can have different feelings about the same thing. That is a fact of life. That is possible to have plurality. Different opinions. You're entitled to your opinion. But is that okay? Not necessarily. Why? Because even though people will have their own opinions and feelings about something, who's to say that that opinion is correct and good? Yeah, of course, you can live your life as you wish. Nobody's going to hold you back. Nobody except for the police and the government is actually going to put restrictions on your beliefs and desires. Baruch Hashem, there's a government and there's a police and there are rules and laws that put limits. Otherwise, if everybody were to do what they want and what they believe, it would be chaos, it would be anarchy. So we do need some set of rules that a government has established, and this is what they follow. Is that government 100% right? Not necessarily. Look at the world. Different governments, different law systems, different rules, different everything. But that is a necessity. It's a necessity, yes. Otherwise, you would have too many beliefs and wishes and desires of everyone. Why isn't the human idea, why isn't the beliefs that are man-made necessarily true? Because they're man-made. So what if they're man-made? Anything that is man-made is usually not objective. It's subjective. If it's man-made, you will basically, if it's up to you, believe in something that you're comfortable with, that you like. We all have, by being human beings, we all have desires and wants and needs. So when we believe in something, when we care for something or somebody, it's because of something that we like and we enjoy and we want to have. So obviously, if a government creates certain laws, regardless of what those laws are, what they have in common is this is what they want for their country. It does not necessarily mean that these laws are the correct laws, are the best laws. Right? It doesn't mean that. You can't prove it. You follow me? If the Congress enacts a law, it's because this is what the people want, this is what the people believe, this is what they think is for the good of the country. Is it the truth? Not necessarily. And that is where human beings fail. And that is one of the biggest mistakes, of course, that people make, is they believe in something, and what they believe may not be right, may not be true. But nevertheless, they believe it. And in answering the question that we started off, why is the vision of human beings blurred? It's because of that, the conflict of interests, things that we like versus things that we know we shouldn't do. By some conscience that we have subconsciously, we know that it's not right, perhaps something bothers us about it, nevertheless we do it, right? So people have all kinds of conflicts, and they want to live, of course, the easy way. They want to live according to their ways, according to the ways they feel comfortable. But that's not necessarily the best way to live your life, because it's not objective, it's always going to be subjective. So we'll continue with Shlomo HaMelech. He's analyzing, remember, everything. He's an observer, and he's examining everything. And he says as follows. Ufaniti ani lirot chokhma veholelut vesichlut. I therefore turned around to examine everything. Chokhmah, wisdom, holelut, having fun, sichlut, ignorance, in other words, not learning at all. And I said to myself, you know what? Everything exists. All these types of people, all these personalities, the smart, the ignorant, the ones who love fun, I see they're all around. They always have been around. They always will be around. All of these different kinds of people. Who's to say one is better than the other? They all exist. And the fact that they all exist, maybe that's the way Hashem wants it to be. Even though he doesn't say it in those words, that's what he basically means. Since all of these types of people exist, maybe it's okay. Maybe they're all acceptable. One interpretation of these words means, who is a human being to come and change things after the king has decided the way things should be? Can we change the world? Maybe this is what Hashem wants. Who's to say one is better than the other? Is there any reason why we should choose one over the other? So, right, this is what he's asking. Another interpretation of who is man to change things, Yonatan ben Uziel, the Aramaic translation, says, if something has already been decreed by Hashem, is it possible for us to change through prayer? In other words, even that is something that he considers. In other words, something that has been decreed, something that Hashem wants there to be. Is it possible for us to do anything about it and to change? And should we? Maybe that's the way Hashem wants things to be. There's so many possibilities. Maybe they're all acceptable. Right? Why should I choose one over the other? Another question that he has, and is expressed in these words, is as follows. Shlomo Melech is trying to find out what is truly important in life. Where should he put his most efforts? He began by examining wisdom. He asked for wisdom. Then he saw the pain that knowing so many things brought him. Maybe let's go to the fun. And he saw that fun is also a waste of time, because how much fun can you have? At some point in life there is tragedy. There is. At some point in time you go and comfort someone for his loss, someone in the family, somebody, a neighbor. Life is full of a mixture of good and bad. What appears to us as bad, it's not bad, but happy and sad. So even if you have fun, it cannot be forever. So Shlomo Melech is asking himself, is there anything at all where we as human beings can make a difference in this world? If everything is set, everything has been put into place, Hashem put all kinds of peoples in this world, in all kinds of situations, where do I make a difference? Where can the human being make a difference, especially if things have been decreed? Right? Like a king decreeing, can a human being in any way make a difference? And what difference should he make? What can he contribute in a positive way to this world? And he says, I do see one thing. And I want to make it clear. He says, one thing is clear to me. If we compare things, there's no doubt in the world that there's an advantage that knowledge has, wisdom has, over ignorance. You know how big of a difference is? Like the difference between light and darkness. There's a big difference between light, daylight, and darkness. In the same way that there's a big difference between day and night, light and darkness, that is the big difference between chokhmah, yeda, knowledge, wisdom, and ignorance. In other words, there is. What is the immediate difference? The immediate difference, the rabbis tell us in Midrash, the commentaries explain, the immediate difference is that a person that has light, he has a flashlight, a candle, and he's walking in darkness, he will not step on the thorns. He will not, he will not fall, he will not get hurt. So the light will be of a big benefit, a big advantage to him if he is walking in darkness in a cave. And we talked about having our vision blurred. In the same way, it's like darkness. If you have a panas, you have a flashlight, you have some source of light, then at least atanitzol minad kotzim uminad barkonim. You can be saved from all kinds of thorns and all kinds of obstacles that may be in life. So he says, you see, knowledge does have some advantages because knowledge is light. And the light of the knowledge illuminates for us the derech, the ways in life that we should hopefully go in the right path and do the right things as much as possible. So far, so good. What else? This sechel, this chokhmah, this knowledge that we have, is also advantageous because that's the only way that man would be able to see the difference between the nefesh and the guf, between the neshama and the guf. We don't see it. All we see is a body, a physical body, and physical wants and needs. We don't really communicate with our neshama, that which is spiritual. It also has needs, and they're very, very different kinds of needs. Through the chokhmah that a person absorbs in his mind, through knowledge, he's able to detect that there's something beyond the physical, something beyond the body. He begins to detect, he still doesn't see it, to detect. And that knowledge is what gives him the koach, and perhaps even the will, to be able to control those desires that he has. Because if he does not control his desires, he will compare himself exactly in the same manner to an animal. What is the difference between a human being and an animal? If you think about it. Unless he behaves differently. And how will he behave differently? If he uses his chokhmah, his sechel, to control those desires. Because he realizes that those desires, if they are uncontrollable, if they just do what they want and satisfy themselves as much as they want, with all the junk food and all the things that there is in this world to enjoy, he's going to get a heart attack. Something is going to happen to him. He has to live a life of moderation, right? You just can't allow yourself everything. This comes from sechel, this comes from chokhmah. Because otherwise, without chokhmah and sechel, once again, we go back to the original question. Why should one control himself? Imagine somebody likes to steal. What's wrong with stealing? Can anybody tell me here what's wrong with stealing? Well, what's wrong with stealing? Taking something which is not yours. It's not moral. Who made up that moral? Unless, of course, you say we borrowed it from the Ten Commandments. Well, that's not the point here. We're talking about that there are no Ten Commandments. There is no Torah. It is something that society has decided that it's in their best interest, that there be law and order, that people should not be stealing from each other. But can you say that something like stealing is wrong? Where do you have the proof that it's wrong? It's a need. It's a want. He doesn't have it and he has it and he wants it too. Right? You can't really put your foot down on this. In other words, you can't really pinpoint anything, that's so strong and so evident about any morals and any values, any system of values, because other people may believe differently, as we said. There are needs, human needs, and unless, of course, there's some sort of sechel, some sort of knowledge that is guiding us, that will give us the strength and the motivation to do certain things differently, we're not going to do it. The human body is just going to gravitate by nature to that which it likes and enjoys. It loves to sleep, take it easy, eat, and enjoys all kinds of things. It gravitates to these things normally. That's the human body. The sechel comes in, of course, and makes a difference. The sechel tells you, what, this is no good. Take it easy, moderate. Don't do too much of this. So that is why the one who has the light, the one who has the sechel, has an advantage over the one who does not. Because he's able to avoid many of the pitfalls in life, many of the mistakes that the ignorant will make. The ignorant's vision is blurred. The one who begins to learn, all of a sudden things become a little bit sharper. Things come into focus. He goes on to explain as follows. This chacham, who has acquired chokhmah, ha-chacham einav berosho, ve'aksil b'choshech holech. The chacham, his eyes is in the head. Baruch Hashem. Can you imagine what would happen if the eyes were in the feet? Why did Hashem put the eyes in the head? The head is the highest part of the body. We can see from a distance. You can't see as well from the feet. Too many things will be blocking your way. As it is, people are short. As it is, sometimes you have to go on the ladder. Right? But Baruch Hashem, the eyes, chacham einav berosho, means a true chacham, his eyes are in the head. That means he evaluates a situation from a distance. Where am I headed? Where am I going? What am I doing? He looks much more ahead and makes decisions and how to deal with the situation. You're going to go on a big road, on a big trip. You don't know the way. You're going to look it up. You're going to check the maps, the GPS or whatever. How do I get there? Which freeway do I take? Right? You evaluate the situation from before. And the Ksil, the ignoramus, walks in darkness. He doesn't even know that he's in darkness. That's a big difference. Chacham einav berosho says to himself, I see the decree from the king. There's a terrible decree coming onto the world. I'm going to pray. I'm going to cancel the decree. I'm going to do whatever I can to change the decree. So a person that has chokhmah, a person that has a little bit of knowledge, a person that knows a little bit about life, it helps him be able to try all kinds of things to undo whatever situation he sees as being something too difficult to bear. Maybe I can undo it. Maybe I can make a change. Maybe I don't have to give up. I don't have to just succumb to it. Maybe there's something I can do about it. That's a chacham. Einav berosho means his eyes are in his head. He's evaluating the situation, whether it's a decree or whether it's some other problem, husband and wife problem. People sometimes just rush to do something, and later, of course, they regret it. Instead of analyzing it, the pros and cons of this, what's going to happen? There's going to be a divorce. What's going to happen? What's going to be with the kids? People don't always evaluate the situation very well. Their vision is blurred. They're walking in darkness. They're only seeing what they want to see. When the Shlomo Melech tells us, "Aksil b'choshech holech," he walks in darkness. What does he mean? He walks in darkness. It means that he sees. Otherwise, he wouldn't be walking. How do you walk in darkness? He sees. Aval hariyah shelo metzumtzemet. When you're walking in darkness, your vision is limited. You can't see so much. So you have to walk slowly. No matter how slowly you walk, you're not going to see everything. That is what he meant by walking in darkness. It's not possible to see everything. And what the Ksil does see, it's what he wants to see. Right? And that is the problem with opinions. Sometimes an opinion, all it is an expression of what a person would like to say, what he actually feels, not necessarily what he knows as a fact. A person really is not entitled to an opinion, to give an opinion, unless he knows the subject matter. If it's a subject that we're discussing, people want to give an opinion. Could you give an opinion on geology if you've never studied the geology? How could you do so? What's the opinion worth? When you study a subject matter, you really, really analyze it, then you can give an opinion. People have opinions about life and death. People have opinions about God. Have you investigated? Have you compared? And this is really a big issue, especially with Jews, because I'm not talking right now to just everybody in the world. I'm talking about the Jews, for the most part. A Jew who's been, for most of his life, distant from Judaism and his tradition, and he's being told that he's wrong, that he hasn't learned, that he doesn't know anything. And he says, I'm very happy and very comfortable the way I live my life. But how do you know that this is the way to live? You don't. You only enjoy living the way you live. That's all. You enjoy living the way you live, and you say, I'm entitled to do what I want. Of course. But that doesn't mean you are right. So how do I know if I'm right or wrong? You investigate. You do your homework. You're told that you're wrong. Don't you want to investigate it? Perhaps the guy who told you you're wrong, he's right. You don't care to find that out? We're talking about life. We're not talking about chocolates. You know, is chocolate good for you? Chocolate not good for you? Well, what can happen? People have eaten chocolates for many, many years. Nothing happened. We're not talking about chocolate. We're talking about life. Don't you want to know? Are you really want to rely on your own knowledge and your own opinions? But those are not objective, remember. They're what you want to believe. It's choshech, it's darkness. Your vision is blurred unless you become knowledgeable. Then you can say, well, you know what? I've compared. I've seen this, I've seen that, and you know what? This makes more sense. Can you do that? Yeah, you could, because man has the ability to discern. To discern means to distinguish between good and bad. Right? Now, to an extent, he does have that ability. Hashem gave him the neshama, and through the neshama, and through, of course, the knowledge that he gains, he's able to make decisions. We're not robots. We're not just full of instincts like animals. We're able to make decisions. We have free will. What for? Because we're capable, if we choose to, making the right decision. Most of the time. Not always, but most of the time. For the basic things, there are things that we cannot always make the right decision. And that's something that we're going to be talking about a couple of weeks from now, actually, probably after Pesach. Because next week we have one more week of Kohelet. The week after that we may talk a little bit about Pesach. Then we have the holiday. So it's probably going to be after the holiday. After the holiday, we're going to get into a fascinating topic that we've discussed in the past called Mazal. Fascinating topic. Why is it fascinating? Because a lot of people, even if they're religious Jews and they're knowledgeable, they are surprised to find out, to discover that certain things are beyond their control. They know we have free will. That they know. But you mean, I don't decide everything? No, we don't decide everything. It comes as a big surprise to many people who think that it's up to them how much money they make. It's up to them who they marry. It's up to them where they live. That's not true. It's just not true. That is totally out of our control. And Shlomo Melech is going to discuss that. It's one of the things that he complains about. We're going to see that soon a little bit. Because you can't make sense from this. Why are certain things the way they are? No matter how smart you will be, you will never be able to make sense of everything. And that is one of the things that he complains about, Shlomo Melech. I just don't understand why certain things are the way they are. But at least if a person is a Chacham, he's able to see more than the one who's not a Chacham. Right? That's what he's trying to point out right now. There is still a difference, even though Chokhmah has its own problems. Some people who are too smart, it could lead to arrogance, it could lead to not accepting other people's opinions, they thinking they're right. And as we said also last week, that Berov Chokhmah Rov Kaas, the more knowledgeable you are, the more upset you are at people. Why are you upset at people? Because for a variety of reasons. Because you see their mistakes, you think you're better or you're more knowledgeable than they are, you become disrespectful of them. It's a certain attitude that people get from being chachamim. Too much chokhmah is not good either. So he's telling us, I've tried everything, but nonetheless, he tells us here, don't make the mistake that even though chokhmah brings pain and brings disappointment, it's still better off than ignorance. And if the chacham, who does see, who does have eyes, does not use them properly, then he makes the same mistakes and has the same predicament, the same destiny as the rasha, as the evildoer, as the one who's blind. In other words, if he does not put to work his knowledge, if he does see the situation the way it is and still doesn't do anything about it, then he ends up suffering the same fate, I should say, as the rasha. Once the human being does acquire knowledge, the commentaries explain, he's able to see his true value. Then he sees who he really is, what the human being really is, that he's not just an animal. Obviously, we look different. We don't walk on four, we walk on two legs. There must be something different. We have the ability of speech. Animals don't. Right? Once a person begins to think, knowledge stimulates the thinking, right? So he begins to think, begins to analyze, which is what Shlomo Melech did. And what does he see? No, we are different. He begins to see the value, the true erech of the human being. Now, for a person to truly see the value of things in life, what is right and what is wrong, it's not enough just to become knowledgeable in what is good and what is right. He also has to see how bad is. In other words, as the pasuk says, "Sur mera ve'aseh tov." There's two parts to this. One is knowing the good and being able to see the bad, how bad it is. Because just like a person who never was in darkness does not appreciate light, who appreciates light? He was just in a tunnel for a month. Baruch Hashem, he came out, he sees the light. He appreciates the light because he was in darkness. A person cannot truly appreciate the erech, the value of tov, unless he knows what ra is. So you have to know both. In other words, you have to see what is good, and you have to see what is bad, why it's bad. So when you see the two, you're able to really appreciate or understand the value of Tov. Now Shlomo Melech goes on to tell us that it's not possible for us to know everything there is. And he tells us as follows. V'yadati gam ani shemikre echad yikre et kulam. In the end, I see that mikre echad, in other words, life is very, very similar for the ignorant and for the knowledgeable person. They both get sick. They both sometimes go through bankruptcies. They both suffer similar experiences. They both eventually die. The mikre, in other words, the events of life, affects everybody alike. So you don't readily observe, if you're an observer, the difference between the two. If you look at the two, what happens to them, to this one, happens to that one. And now he's preparing the way for us to analyze the very, very difficult questions of all. He's going to begin to open up the door to the famous question of why is it then that tzaddik veralo rasha v'tov lo, that the righteous people have a difficult life and the wicked have such an easy life. He's opening the door. He's leading the way to that question. Because I just started saying that chacham is better. Knowledge is better. Knowledge has an advantage over ignorance. But wait a minute. But I do happen to see that mikre echad is to everyone. Now here is a key word over here. He tells us mikre echad. We know, for those of us who know a little bit Hebrew, the word mikre means by chance. It also means events and incidents, but it also means by chance. Is there anything that happens in this world by chance? A Jew who really has strong emunah and bitachon in God knows there's no such thing as a chance. Things for the most part don't happen b'mikre, by chance. They happen for a reason. Wow, you mean there's a reason? Once you say that, you're automatically implying that there's somebody that causes things to happen, that it's besides us. I don't see him. In other words, things happen for a reason. That means somebody's making things happen for a reason. So he uses the word mikre, which means two things here. It means events in life appear to be the same for the ones who are smart, for the ones who are ignorant. I don't see a difference in the life. Is one happier? No, on the contrary. If anything, we're going to see later that the good people are not having as good of a life. If we start comparing, so that's going to make him, that says, it makes me upset. Shlomo Melech says all these things made him upset. Why does it have to be like that? It doesn't make sense to me. So maybe it's not so good to have this knowledge after all. And even if I do learn, and even if I do know, can I possibly know everything there is to learn? No, the answer is no, right? As we will see later on, he says something like, even if you were to live for 1,000 years, you would never be able to know everything there is to know. 1,000. So is it worth it? So the commentaries explain, yes, a little bit of knowledge is better than nothing for the following reason. There is a nice mashal of a father who had a very, very difficult child. His son had a mental block. He just lo kalat. He couldn't learn. Whatever you taught him, it didn't stick. So the father didn't send him to school. It's a waste of time, a waste of his money. So a friend of the father met up with the father and says, "Where's your son?" He's at home. Why is he at home? He's not fit for school. His mental block. He says, "You're crazy. Send him to school, even if he just learns how to make berachot, even just if he learns how to make a blessing, just how to pray a little bit of prayer, it's worth it. Even just for that. Something is better than nothing." So it's true, we can't possibly know everything there is to know. The human mind is limited. But something is better than nothing. we see it makes a difference. Somehow, we don't see yet how, we just know that if we have Chokhmah, we have light, and if we don't have Chokhmah, we're in darkness. And it's true, because if a person has no yeda, no knowledge whatsoever about life, he will make many mistakes. His vision is blurred, he won't know where he's walking. He won't know what to be careful with. Well, that's for sure, that's a fact. People just don't see it. He's an observer, and he sees this. People, as we've explained all along, who are living their life, don't realize this. The best proof for this, by the way, is advertisement. You know why companies spend millions of dollars in advertisements? There's one advertisement in Israel that says like this: drink Maccabi beer and you'll be a man. You mean if I don't drink Maccabi, I won't be a man? Drink Maccabi, you'll be a man. Be a man. Diye gever. And what does the guy think? Well, I'm going to open up the top buttons of my shirt, hold a Maccabi beer in my hand. That is manly. And the women will want me. I don't know what he's going to think. You know, that's what you think. People don't think that way. They actually think that way. It's incredible. Some people are so gullible. The human mind can be easily impressed. He wants to be like him. You know, there's a word in English called an impersonator. You know that? Have you heard that word? Some people know how to impersonate others. There is what they call them Elvis impersonators, I heard. They grow their sideburns like him, and they sing like him. They want to impersonate him. Some of them do a good job. You have the people who are natural impersonators. They're not doing this for a living, for a comedy or for a joke. They actually want to be like somebody else. Now, if that somebody else would have been a righteous person, that's fine. But sometimes it's, what do you want to be like him? Yeah. But people, human beings, have that weakness that they are receptive sometimes to the wrong things. Instead of being receptive to good things, they are also at least receptive to negative things in life. And that's what we call, in our terminology, pressure, peer pressure sometimes. Peer pressure is a form of negative receptiveness. In other words, we are receiving something, our antennas are receiving this pressure that is making us want to be or want to do what certain people do. And I heard it in certain communities here. I got to make a big wedding. I have to invite 500 people, and I have to have a orchestra, and I have to have a singer, an Armenian singer, right? What for? They expect it of me. Poor fellow. You know, these are weak people. They're weak. They got to do what other people are expecting him to do. No mind of his own, no philosophy of his own, no values of his own. Just do what everybody else. And it's just like the other story I told you about a police stopping a guy who was speeding. You know you're speeding? Officer, I was just going with the flow. That's a typical answer, by the way. Yeah, he wasn't looking at the speedometer. He was going with the flow. Everybody was speeding. And what does the officer say? Tell me, would you go with the flow if they're going over the cliff? People are going over the cliff. You're going to go with them too? Just because they do? Where's your sechel? No sechel. So there's no doubt that even a little bit of sechel is worth it. No doubt about it. However, Shlomo Melech is disturbed by one thing, which he discusses next. All right, knowing is better than not knowing, but in the end, as an observer, what do I see? Mikre echad. It's still the same, because even though, of course, during life, the person with the flashlight has an advantage over the person without the flashlight. He's wearing glasses. He has a binoculars. He can tell. You know, binoculars is a very important tool in the military, especially. You can see from a great distance. If you have a telescope, you can see even more. There's no doubt. It's a tool. It's a powerful tool. But in the end, mikre echad, he begins to complain. They both die the same. They both are laid down in the ground. They're both covered with shrouds. What's the difference? It makes no difference how much money you had. It makes no difference how much of a chacham you were. In the end, it looks like everybody goes through the same kind of life. If anything, sometimes the one who does not know has a better life. So why is it worth, nevertheless, to have chokhmah? I see it's all mikre. But as he explains later on, there's no such a thing as mikre. Shlomo Melech sees that in the end there's something called gzera milemala. Even though he doesn't use those words, but that's what he's implying. He says like this: if people do the right thing or do the wrong thing, in the end there is a master plan. There's a plan here that has nothing, not necessarily related to what people do. There is somebody or something that is directing or dictating how things should turn out. So you can do whatever you want, invest as much as you want, and learn as much as you want, and it could be that all of this will not make a difference. If there is a gezerah, if what has been decreed is something totally different than what you wanted for yourself. So therefore, what did my chokhmah help me? This is a very, very important point. As we said, he's going to elaborate in the next chapters about. There appears to be something behind, something beyond our actions, something above us that is dictating what should be. No mikre is a real mikre. Nothing that happens for no reason. There is something out there that is controlling all of these events. And this is going to be a big problem from him. What's the problem? Shlomo Melech, was a good person. He's a righteous, he was a chacham, right? He built a Bet HaMikdash. And what does he see in the Ruach HaKodesh that he has? He's prophetic, he's divinely inspired. He sees that his own son, Rehavam, is going to split the kingdom. He's going to cause tremendous chaos, problems. His own son. In other words, you try your best, you give your kids the best, but can you control the outcome? Can you dictate what's going to happen in the future? That your child will be exactly like you wanted him to be? Look, you have no control over that. Yes, sir, you want to ask?
Was it not that Hashem wanted this happen? That Israel and Shevet Yehuda be two?
Right.
Hashem wanted this.
In some ways, yes. In some ways, not. Obviously, Hashem would prefer that everything would be beautiful, everything would be right, and there should be no split. But as a result of certain things that are happening in Am Yisrael, Hashem says, you know what? This is the best way to do it, is to split the kingdom in two. So you're right. In some ways, Hashem wants it. In other ways, Hashem is allowing it to happen. He doesn't really want it to be like that, because it's not for the good of Am Yisrael. But nevertheless, Shlomo Melech sees this. Shlomo Melech sees that he doesn't have full control. No matter how smart he becomes, no matter what he does, he cannot control the world. He cannot control his own children. He cannot control events. Even though he's doing everything right according to the Chokhmah. And because of certain events, the difference between a Chacham and a Ksil are very difficult to tell apart. Because of all these events. Look, this guy never went to school. This guy doesn't have a high school diploma, and he's richer. He has more money than the guy who has a PhD. What do you say about that?
So,
there's a guy that came just yesterday from Abadan or from Kermanshah and knows not a word of English and makes more money than the guy who's been here for 35 years. How do you explain that? Now, people don't know this. So we're going to be explaining that after Pesach when we talk about Mazal a little bit, just a little bit about what this Mazal is. Because even if you know there's something called Mazal, you know what we don't know and what we'll never know for sure? Why does he have this Mazal and I have this Mazal? Let's say we know it's Mazal. But why? Why did Hashem give him that Mazal and him that Mazal? That's a very good question.
past life,
What?
from the past life.
Oh, you're already, Baruch Hashem, you've been to the lectures, so you know that there's something tied to reincarnation, there's cheshbonot. But the best way to explain it the way we are taught, cheshbon from Hashem. Hashem has a cheshbon. And whatever is Hashem cheshbon, in other words, cheshbon means Hashem has a reason for it. Whatever that reason is, it's for the good. We may not think so, we may not feel that way, but everything that comes down from above is for a good. We don't know how. Because we did say that man has the ability to be destructive and to ruin things and to do the wrong things. Yes, but only to a limited extent. If Hashem does not want a country to throw a nuclear bomb at another country, He's not going to let it happen. No matter how evil the king or the prime minister, the president is of that country. It's just not going to happen. Somebody will assassinate him before he ever thinks of doing it. Something will interfere with it because Hashem doesn't want him to destroy his world. So there's only certain things, some things that we have free will, other things that we don't have free will. But this is very important because he's preparing us for this very important question of why tzaddik v'ra'ah rashav v'tov. Why is it that life doesn't appear to be fair? The people who are smart and good and everything right are suffering, are having a difficult life. But our perception is wrong. Is suffering really suffering? You know, I like to use the example of somebody's leg being amputated. And you are behind this door. The amputation is happening in that room. You don't have a chance to ask the guy to talk to the one they're amputating his leg. All you see is a leg being amputated. Is it good or bad? It's bad, especially if there's no anesthesia. He's in pain. After he's finished, they finally open up the door. You rush over to the patient. I feel so bad for you. He says, what are you talking about? This doctor saved my life. Had he not amputated the leg, he would have died from the gangrene. The poison would have spread. We don't see that. At a distance, we don't see. We don't know everything. Right? We wish we had a direct line with him. We could ask him everything. But we don't. That's just life. Hashem conceals himself. Shlomo Melech continues on. To make things worse, remember, he's complaining now. Not only are events alike for the Ksil and for the Chacham, whatever happens to the fool can happen to me. Why did I become smart? I realized that this is also vanity. In other words, this also doesn't make sense. This is also in some ways strange. In other words, people will forget later on. If there was ever a difference between the Chacham and the Ksil and the fool, it will not last forever. Eventually people will forget about the two of them. Eventually things are forgotten. They both will die. And in the grave, there's no difference. 100 years from now, will anybody remember the Chachamim? I'm talking about the knowledgeable, we're not talking about our Chachamim. Knowledgeable people. And there may be a picture in some encyclopedia about them. You know, this guy invented this guy was a very smart guy, but nobody cares about these things. It's all forgotten anyway. There's nothing left. Everything is forgotten anyway, so what difference does it make? That's what he's trying to say. There are other, by the way, interpretations of these Pesukim that talk more about how the Chacham is different than the Ksil in the afterlife. But I'm using the simple interpretation of the Ibn Ezra over here in this Pesukim, that Shlomo Melech is complaining about how, even though knowledge is more valuable, in the end, people don't see it. Everything is forgotten with time anyway. The question that he's leading to right now, that if everything is forgotten, did it make a difference that this man became knowledgeable? Because does something remain of this individual? You see how he's opening up another question that we're not aware of yet. We are aware of, but others are not. When people die, is there anything after that? See, if you tell Shlomo Melech, but Shlomo Melech, there's Olam Haba. He says, I know that and you know that. But not everybody who's learning this knows this. So right now he's paving the way opening the question or preparing the question of Hasharat HaNefesh. Okay, everything is forgotten. Chocham, Ksil, they're both in the grave 6 feet under, like they say in English, with a tombstone on top. Who cares what they did? Did anything remain? Because everything is forgotten. So, and we know there's something called Hasharat HaNefesh, means that the soul continues in the afterlife. There is something that remained. Now, that which remained, did the Chokhmah that it acquired make a difference in that Nefesh? Because a Nefesh is a Nefesh. Did the deeds that it performed make a difference in that Nefesh? Or is it just in life? Because if it's just in life, everything is forgotten and finished. Or is there something that remains? Because if something does remain, I want to know about it. It pays. Right? People, had a problem with where to invest their money. Currency can become devalued. The yen, the dollar, the euro goes up and down. Gold, silver, things go up and go. We don't know where to invest our money. Real estate, right? Well, we don't know. Things don't last forever. He wants to know, is all this chokhmah going to make a difference at some point? Because here it doesn't. See, here I see events are almost equal for the fool and for the smart one, and sometimes the fool is better off. They die and everything is forgotten. So is there anything that's going to eventually stay? He doesn't say it in those words, but that's where he's leading to. He's preparing us to this important question. Did the chokhmah in the end make such a big difference that something of it will remain? And the answer, of course, is yes. The nefesh that elevates itself in this world, obviously is a different kind of nefesh than the nefesh that entered this world. Right? The physical body grows, the nefesh grows too. There was a nefesh that came into the baby, became something, made something of themselves. So that something, of course, remains. That's something you take it with you. He doesn't say it yet, because he's analyzing. If nothing remains, then what's the difference? So does something remain where it will be worth it for me to do, to learn? Will it make a difference on the nefesh? Is there such a thing as Olam Haba? He doesn't discuss it yet. Right? He's looking at this as an outsider. But we know there is. In conclusion, what is he telling us so far? That everything in this world that we have, if this is all there is, then life is strange. If this is all there is that we see, it's very, very strange and it doesn't make any sense. That's what he's saying. But we know it's not true. There is more to that, right? But he's telling us, if this is all there is, it really makes no sense. A guy never finished school, doesn't know a word of English, right? We're going to see that. Should make more money and have more, supposedly, more homes and more treasures and more cars than the guy who works so hard. Does that make any sense to you? It doesn't. If this is all there is. If this is all there is, it doesn't make sense. And that is why, we'll just see one or two more pesukim. And that is why when he analyzed this, what does he say? Look at the words he uses. V'saneti et ha'chaim, and I hate life. I hate this world, he says. Ki ra' alai ha'ma'aseh she'na'asa tachat hashamesh. It's just things are so bad the way they appear to me under the sun. Ki hakol hevel u're'ut ruach, and then it's all vanities and it's so frustrating. Re'ut ruach, it's so agonizing. It's so disappointing. Re'ut ruach. I feel terrible about it. It breaks my heart. That's another word for it. It breaks my heart. I'm so frustrated and depressed because of all these things. Then he says, "V'saneti," again, I hate the fact. Saneti ani et kol amali, everything that I have done, shani amel tachat hashamesh, that I have done and that I have accomplished. I hate the fact shani henu le'adam sheyeh acharai, that I have to leave it to somebody that will come after me. He's talking about his own son too here. I hate this fact. Why? Why does he hate this fact? So you leave it over to somebody else. What's the big deal? He's not necessarily going to do what I wanted to do. He's not going to have necessarily the same ideas and the same mindset, the same philosophy, right? that I had. Look at politics. Who's president of the United States now? A Democrat. So him with the Congress and his people, they're going to make some laws and they're going to run this country according to their value system and their philosophy.
Say some laws or a lot of laws?
Yeah, whatever. Law. Rules and laws and taxes and whatever. They'll be defeated eventually, hopefully, right? And who come after them? Maybe Republicans. And what are they going to do? They're going to change everything and undo as much as possible what this guy did. What's going to happen to this country? Like what happened to all the empires. If you read world history, you wonder, Spain and Portugal and Greece and Persia and Rome, they were great empires. How come they fell? You know, the history books don't really talk about why they fell. They just tell us they went up and they fell. Of course, it tells there were wars here, there were assassinations here, you know. But one of the things that contributed to the fall of empires is no consistency in the way of life, in the philosophy of life, in doing things the same way. And that, of course, breaks up the country from within. There's no consistency, there's no continuity, there's no emphasis on education, on taking what you have that you've seen that was successful, whatever it is, and making sure that it lasts into the second generation. So there's no continuity. It falls. What falls? Anything that's sheker eventually falls. Anything that is not real, it cannot last forever. So Shlomo Melech is telling us a very important point over here. You know why I don't like what I see? Because a normal, average person cannot make any sense of this. He can't. Now, of course, he's going to teach us, we still have 10 perakim to go, 10 chapters to go, that we shouldn't worry about the fact that we don't know everything, that we can't make sense of everything. He's going to tell you, I'm going to summarize everything, what's important, in a nutshell, and if you do that, you'll be fine. So he's going to eventually tell that. But so far, it sounds depressing. To use words like, I hate what I see, it's unbearable, I can't take it, is because he's telling us the average person without too much knowledge cannot make sense of what he sees. This world is a strange place. Unless you have certain pieces of information, what you're going to see is not going to make too much sense to you. So even if you become knowledgeable, you will never know the why for things that happen. You become knowledgeable, you still won't know the reasons. Only Hashem knows. And as far as leaving stuff behind for the next generation, you have no control. You don't know. Maybe all the good work that you've done is going to go to waste because after so many years comes along another generation, another person, your own son maybe, who will do things completely different than what you wanted, which is exactly what happened to him, and he's seeing this in advance. Could you blame him for feeling the way he feels? He feels terrible. He says, I see what's going to happen. What a waste. What did I gain from learning when this guy, this son of his, is going to undo everything? So where is Shlomo Melech taking us right now? He's taking us to a very, very important point that Bezrat Hashem will cover a little bit next week and in the following months, of course, is that you have to realize that there's something other than what the eye sees. And that other is called Hashgacha Elyonah. Hashgacha Elyonah means Divine Providence. There is another plan. There is Hashem who oversees, who overlooks, who's involved in our life, who directs things in his own way and manages the world perfectly. It's his world. And he didn't just create the world and bail out. He's around. We don't see him, so what? We don't see electricity. We know it exists. It works. Do you see it? Do you have to see everything? No. Do you have to understand everything? Also not. You do it because it's good. You trust your doctor. You trust the pilot when you go on his plane. Trust Hashem. Now people have a problem with that. They trust their doctor, they trust the pilot, but they don't trust Hashem. Doesn't make sense. The problem is that they're not focused. They're not focused because they're not knowledgeable. They're not knowledgeable, of course, because they didn't learn. If you don't learn, then obviously a lot of things are not going to make sense. But even if you do learn, just remember, you're not going to understand everything. But the moment we begin to understand that there is a mashgiach in this world, other than us, that events that occur in life are not always comprehensible because there's something else involved in directing these events, it calms us down a little bit. We realize, oh, that's the reason why we can't control it. And it's okay that we can't control it. We wouldn't necessarily always know to do the right thing anyway. Leave it to the boss. He knows what he's doing. Right? You see how this philosophy, this outlook, this perspective is extremely helpful in life, because people get disappointed all the time. People do not know how to deal with all kinds of challenges. Somebody insults you. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with somebody insulting you? Do you react? Do you insult him back? Do you begin to cry? What do you do? You're going to see all kinds of reactions. But if a person learns the Torah, he knows that an insult from an outsider is also mishamayim. You mean he doesn't have free will? No, he has free will, and he's going to pay for it. But the fact that your ears had to hear it, the Baal Shem Tov says, was meant to be. If we had to see something terrible in the street, a tragedy, a car accident, you just happened to be at that corner at that time, it was meant for you to see the car accident. Nobody thinks like that. Think, oh, I happened to be walking down the street and I saw it. No, no, no. You had to see the car accident. You had to hear what you heard. How you react and deal with it is, of course, up to you. But Hashem is even directing these events. Even minor events that we don't think are directed are also directed. This is a very important idea because it adds a completely different dimension to the way we see life. All of a sudden, we're putting on different kinds of glasses that are bifocals. In other words, to see from a distance, to see from up close. Wow, it makes a difference if somebody, imagine, couldn't see and never had glasses, and all of a sudden they put on him glasses. Oh, wow. It's like somebody who never was able to see, was blind, and all of a sudden he sees colors. Wow, green, yellow, blue. What a difference. Knowledge is the same way, especially knowledge of Torah, because we're talking about knowledge about life, not science, not biology. It's important, but this is about life, about understanding as much as possible what's going on. Can we ever understand everything? No. The answer is no, but something is better than nothing. And if we do gain a little bit of knowledge, and B'ezrat Hashem Kohelet will impart upon us a lot of knowledge, it will definitely help us guide ourselves through life in the best way possible, to avoid all the pitfalls, to avoid mistakes, to not be disappointed, to take things in the right way, to have a better attitude, and of course, to be happier. So even though Chokhmah is sometimes painful to know certain things, he will tell us, he will convince us. Nevertheless, you're better off being a Chacham than not being a Chacham. At least you will make a little bit more sense from the situation than one who's totally ignorant. To make sense of this confusing world is not easy, but with a little bit of Chokhmah, it will make a big difference. Okay, we'll continue next week.